Szymon,
Yes.
thank you so much for meeting with me.
Yes, it is my pleasure.
It's my pleasure, and as you know, I'm here in Poland because we've figured out that nearly 11,000 witnesses have left in the 10 years from 2008 to 2018, which is a phenomenal number of witnesses. Why? How did that happen?
Yes, at the first we should look at Polish background and at the background of Poland. As a country, we are put between East and West. And we are always in the zone of someone else's, sometimes very unhelpful for us actions. Some political actions, ways to dominate Poland, to use our country for someone else's means or purposes. So as Polish people, we were in many afflictions during history, and Polish people generally love freedom. And that is why we can say not about one uprising in Poland, but about many uprisings in Poland. People in Poland also very appreciate the freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and freedom of publications. Censorship was an uneasy thing for Polish literature, for Polish publications. So we are the heirs of communism, but we already get rid of many of communists' relics, you know. And I believe that specific nature of Polish people is that they love freedom. There was a popular rock group in Poland, which they had a song that freedom, that is what I understand and love. Freedom, I cannot resign from it. And it is something like that, it in our blood, in our mind. And I believe that it is also true in religion, that people who once, because of some circumstances in life, problems, they try to help themselves by Jehovah's Witnesses religion. Some of them in time feel uncomfortable, more and more uncomfortable, and they want more freedom, more truth. After some years in the organization, they think that they are given the monotonous program, which is not according to their deepest longings. So they search for something more. But the main reasons, I would say, are the progress of internet in Poland. Besides our need for freedom, the progress of internet made critical information about the Watchtower movement very easy to find. Also, many publications were translated from English into Polish and published. For example, the main work in which I participated as a translator and proofreader, and I found good publisher for this, is Crisis of Conscience by Raymond Franz, with whom I corresponded for 11 years. And we also translated very helpful books by David Reed, former J.W. Elder and regular pioneer, who simply made a biblical critique of the Watchtower organization as well as logical. And also we produced our books, which were even translated into English. There's a main researcher in Poland called Włodzimierz Bednarski, who is from Gdańsk.
On the coast.
Yes, on the coast, near the sea. And he produced especially 3 books which are translated into English. The first one is Armageddon in 1975. Probability or Possibility. I was a translator of this book. Also 1925 and Millions Now Living Who Will Never Die. And the third book, Ever-Changing Teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses. The 3 are easy to download by the internet from Piotr Andryszczak website or from Academia.edu website where I have a profile, and those books are downloaded from all over the world because they are in English. I had the privilege to help in them. So information.
Am I right in saying that this writer has never been a Jehovah's Witness?
This writer has never been a Jehovah's Witness, but as a young man in the school, he was frightened by his friend who was a witness that the 1975 means the end of the world, the end of this system of things. And he was so frightened that he became inspired to check if that was true. And he started his research, and he devoted all his life for study and research of Jehovah's Witnesses doctrine. He started one of the first meeting points for people who need help and support, having relatives or other people interested in the Watchtower movements. And he was an advisor there. He helped people practically, gave them good advice how to act when, for example, a wife is interested in witnesses and a husband not. So he's a very experienced man. I am evangelical, he is Catholic, but we feel the common call for helping people who are involved in the Watchtower movement, because there are great needs in this area. So we don't look at about our differences. We cooperate on regular basis to produce even another book on the question of blood. Now we are preparing English version on the book on the question of blood.
So do you feel that this wide array of well-researched resources has contributed to the number of witnesses leaving?
Yes, we are very sure that more and more publications, both internet publications and produced by publishing houses, it contributed in great measure to opening people's minds. But the last years I observed there is a very great progress in building new YouTube channels by former witnesses. Many former witnesses opened their YouTube channels because they feel moral obligation to help their former brethren and open their minds on some injustice, on untrue in the organization. And it is now, I think, it speeds up the work among witnesses, because it is very easily to have on your smartphone a program from YouTube channel which explains in very practical and just sometimes visible way, by some diagrams, by some photocopies, what is wrong with the Watchtower. So blogs, video blogs and other ways, also actions, public actions, also conferences on witnesses. As for me, I spoke at many conferences on Jehovah's Witnesses, their beliefs, their origin. I was very encouraged because many people didn't know that the witness have their beginning in the Miller movement in the 19th century. So people were very interested when they found that there are connotations with also Adventist movement. So a need for education. I believe in the way that education opens people's minds. It just depends if they are open. As for me, I was an elder for 14 years, and I almost lost my privilege or service just when I started, when I was ready to ask some difficult questions to the secret overseer. So I know that questions are not very pleasant for the leadership of the organization.
Some people look at what's happening in Poland and they argue that it's nothing to do with resources perhaps, or with protests or whatever. It's because Polish people are moving to other countries like the UK. So they would argue that, say, 10,000 witnesses have simply moved to the UK or to another country. What do you say to that?
I believe that it's not true. It is partly true that people migrated to Britain or other countries, but it made them maybe more open, but some are coming back. I believe that I have a contact with a former circuit overseer who told me that in his area, as far as he remembers, there was no such a departure from the organization as now. He has a comparison because he's about 60 years old and he was brought up in the witness organization. And even after 1975, there was no such loss of numbers in the membership of the Watchtower. So it is a simplified version that just people left and they are lacking. No, it is something more. Also I, on personal basis, I receive many letters, many emails and telephones from people who want to leave the Watchtower, and sometimes they live in such kind of underground because they have a wife or family which is against their mind, against their searching for truth. So I have a comparison. When I left the organization in December 2001, there was just a handful of former witnesses. Now there is a really great number of people, and the internet forums also contributed very much for such people, for their openness of their mind. And also the other factor, which I would like to say, a major factor in loss of publishers in Poland is a failure of Generation 1914 doctrine. As far as I remember, it was taught as a dogma. It wasn't a supposition or something like that. It was taught as a very in a very positive way, as something that will happen for sure. We had a line in the Awake magazine that God will make the new order before the generation of 1914 will die. So it was very strongly emphasized that it is true, and I believed that too. And I am ashamed now that I believed such things and that I preached such things. I have the comparison with my friend Wanda, who lived in Warsaw. She was born in Warsaw. She was 50 years in the organization. He just died maybe 2 years ago. She was very eager and zealous witness. She even had meetings of the central branch office in her house. They had unofficial, illegal meetings. Also, the servant of the country, Wilhelm Scheider, used to live in her flat after his release from prison, and she really smuggled illegal materials for underground publishing of the Watchtower publications. So she was very zealous for organization. But the first blow was 1975. She was a witness since the end of the 50s, and 75 was the first blow for her, but the second and last was 1914, because it was a dogma now. And I can explain that even old witnesses can have an access to the internet. She asked her daughter, Dorothy in English, they always say to us on our congregational meetings that we shouldn't look into the internet. Please check what they are saying, those apostates. Maybe they say some true. And she started to search for her mother, and Wanda found many helpful informations, and much helpful information, and it led her out of the organization after 50 years of membership. And I know more such old-timers which personally didn't have an access to the internet, but through family they found the truth about the truth, you know.
Wow.
So she really emphasized that generation 1914 was the biggest blow for her faith, and it really undermined her trust to the Watchtower organization. But there are also some personal circumstances which lead people out of the organization. For example, a lack of true care about people, especially elderly people. Wanda told me about old-timers of the Watchtower movement here in Warsaw, who once paid great money for the organization, who were regular pioneers and special pioneers, and in their old age they were neglected. She knew even a witness who was a drug addict, but he had a better heart for such people who were alone, and he visited them. He visited them and helped them. So there is a problem of accent on youth in the organization. Always new people, young, energetic, just to do the work of the organization, and all generations feel neglected. And they feel lack of love. Organizations say much about Christian love, but in practical way, it is often lacking.
You mentioned about the failure of the 1914 teaching. Obviously, that's a failure that impacts everyone around the world, and everyone is able to observe things like the 1914 failure, the issues with child sex abuse, the problems with blood transfusions. But nowhere in the world do we see numbers leaving as we're seeing right now in Poland. How do we replicate the same numbers in other countries? In other words, is there something that Poland is doing, or activists in Poland, something that they're doing that activists in other countries can do?
I think that it is good to arrange meetings for people who can learn something about the truth of organization. For example, with my friends, we started to arrange conferences each year, annually, since 2010. The first was in Łódź. And at every conference, we have new people who can learn something new, who can buy publications, buy books, or receive even free booklets or books. And we get in touch with them, and we found that some of those people are really hurt. They really had problems, or still have problems with the organization. Sometimes their families are intolerant, who are witnesses. And we arrange another kind of meetings, which is a weekend with the Bible. It is for people who believe, but it is also for people who can just to rest with us, to talk with us, to know each other. And we spend time with them. We arrange it in some nice picturesque place when they can rest. We have more free time. And we don't have some guru, some leader. We just have conversations, discussions, and people feel free to ask questions. And our idea is to make free people's brains and find encouragement in wider biblical viewpoint. For example, we found that as for people who believe and are witnesses, and they are not inclined toward atheism, that when they found that the basis of Christianity in the Bible is unmerited favor, that it is on God's side what God provides for people, for feeling good, for feeling free, they rest, because organization always put emphasis on men. You must do, you must do, you must do. And it is not free. It is a coerced activity. And now we just encourage people to find more space in their freedom, and to think that God is on their side, not against them. And I know a businessman. He's a very successful businessman who was brought up in the witness family, and this family implemented in his mind, or incurred in his mind, an idea of God who is cruel, who just want to punish him for him. We present now positive view on the Bible and on Christian teachings, and people who are still believers, they find biblical alternative, because there is a process of secularization in Poland. It also contributes to departure of people from the Watchtower movement, but there are still some churches, smaller and bigger, and even Roman Catholic Church or other older churches, and people find their spiritual way in different way than the Watchtower does.
Sure. And you mentioned before that you were an elder for, I think, 14 years?
I was a member of Jehovah's Witnesses organization for 18 years, but an elder for 14 years. And I am now...
swift rise to the top, isn't it?
Yes.
3 years.
Yes, I was very active. I was a regular auxiliary pioneer, and they thought that I made the progress, and they made me an elder.
And how did you first encounter the witnesses?
Well, I was a member of a youth movement called New Wave Movement. We had a great crisis of communism in the late 70s. And as a young people, we felt something very similar to young people in Britain. Young people in Britain were often unemployed during Margaret Thatcher's rule, and they felt frustrated and discouraged. And they formed punk rock movement, and later new wave, more post-punk movement. And we, as young people who were discouraged with the communism, we found some special emotions very similar to those young rebels from Britain and USA, and we felt the same. But we were against communism; they were against the hard government of Margaret Thatcher and unemployment. And so I was a young punk rocker and later avant-garde musician and a painter and also writer. I wrote poems, and I was a member of an artistic bohemy, and I knew many people who are now artists in Poland, who are musicians. And I spent them some time. I also produced my own music, but the communist show business was closed to us. And my tries, my activity, musical activity, was almost unnoticed. Although good musicians spoke very well of us, but the show business was closed to us. And I was very discouraged. Some of us as musicians had depression because we couldn't, as young people, do these things, to be noticed, to be published, and also some French label published two records of my friends, but it was not enough. So as a young man, I was I was kind of dejected, and when there was a state of war implemented by the communist general Wojciech Jaruzelski against Solidarity, who wanted to change government in Poland, to change the system in Poland. I was so sad that I felt like a man who is drowning, and he can also take razor blade into his hand to save himself. There is a saying in Poland that a drowning man can even take razor blade to save himself. And I was very dejected, depressed as a young people, that there is no future for me as an artist, young artist here. So, and I had the problems with controlling myself. I smoked some marijuana. Sometimes I was drunk, and I felt that I need God in my life, but I didn't know that my need would be exploited by the Watchtower organization. I don't have issues with people who studied with me the books of the Watchtower organization because they were sincere, but I think that my zeal for new life, for better life, was misdirected to serve the organization. First, they showed me the Bible, and next, after a few years, I realized that I am more connected to this faithful and discreet slave as a kind of body of cardinals or something like that than the Bible itself. So it is out of youth search for truth, for meaning in life. It was the main reason why I joined the Witnesses.
And in your 14 years as an elder, were you ever involved in disfellowshipping people?
Yes, and I am ashamed of this. I could reconcile with some people whom I disfellowship. Now I feel very ashamed of it. I know that there are some wrongdoings of people, but now I know that helping people is much more complex thing. It needs much more patience, because there was a fear among witnesses, elders. The fear was that one sinner in the congregation may spoil the whole congregation. And that is why it is better to get rid of him very quickly, just to save the spiritual health of the local congregation. It was a very common fear among witness elders. And I am proud that sometimes I'm not proud of me, but I'm very glad, I would say, that sometimes I defended people from being disfellowshipped. For example, I had an interesting story. Two women came to me and said, my boy and my girl, they knew each other too good before marriage, and we are just hurrying up for marriage because a child is on the way. And the other elders wanted to disfellowship this young couple, but I defended them, and I am now glad that I defended them, because they later proved to be good family, and they appreciated the mercy or compassion we in fact showed them. But I defended them. But for example, I had an accident, an event that there was an old man who believed that the term overseer is wrong in the organization. But it was that people who serve in the congregation should be called servants. And it was my first committee. I was just a spectator. The other elders led the thing, and I agreed. Later I met that brother, and I asked him for forgiveness. I apologized when I was a former witness too. And he said, nothing wrong. And we reconciled. We were happy to shake our hands that now we are friends. So there was something that I am ashamed. Also, I must say something about courses for elders. Courses for elders were very one-sided. I remember such a course in Gdańsk, where district overseer proved to be a fanatic. He told us that we should treat leaders of other churches or religious organizations, as pigs who are in the mire, because he showed a watchtower with picture of pigs in the mire. But it really touched my heart, there were some means which make me awake in some cases, and I asked for comment, and may I make a comment? I said, you said that the leaders of other religions are as pigs, but I know an Eastern Orthodox priest who is a moral good man, and he said he's maybe a moral but a prostitute. So I was sometimes terrified, and these were such things which opened my mind. Also, there was a talk about the legal department in the Watchtower Society in Poland. They always say to us, do not tell anybody that we have legal department in Poland. But they gave us directions from this. It was a kind of secrecy, which was a bit disturbing. And we received there was a book for elders, but we received additional advices which were inhuman. For example, if a witness was working in the business of a man who became so-called apostate, we were told as elders that we should advise him that he should resign from this work. Sooner the better. And there were many such additional unwritten rules, which were in fact were rules, and we received them.
Do you think that Jehovah's Witnesses in Poland might be a more strict, more rule-oriented religion than Jehovah's Witnesses in more Western countries like the UK or America?
My observation is that Jehovah's Witness organization before the fall of communism was different in Poland than in the West. It was sometimes more legalistic, but at the same time it was more warm and family-like. And some old people from the organization now feel a kind of conflict of generations. They cannot accept this kind of leadership, which is very cold, very technocratic, and they still recall, I know such old-timers, they tell me, we recall meetings, conventions in the forests and other things, which were more brotherly, more, open. But I think that some of the leaders under the communism and later were more legalistic than others. I knew several circuit overseers, and some of them were very sympathetic men, very kind men, even gentlemen, but some of them were presenting additional rules. Or, for example, one sympathetic circuit overseer told people who resigned from regular pioneer service, it is your situation. It has changed. Like the Apostle Paul, who once was more active, later less active, and they were more, understanding for people. But I knew such a circuit overseer who was very zealous, and he said, a man or woman who doesn't have their numbers as a regular pioneer is a zero. So it should be, and they shouldn't resign from regular pioneer service if they are active in the service. There is no such thing, because they were very ambitious in the numbers way. They were obsessed with statistics and with numbers. And some witnesses were very legalistic also in the terms of shunning. But I believe that there are two kinds of people in the witness organization. Some are, more understandable, more, reasonable, balanced, and they tend to be more tolerant. For example, I knew an elderly couple whose daughter was disfellowshipped from the organization. They didn't apply the watchtower rules. Their heart was more inclined toward her than toward watchtower rules. And I knew many such things that people were better than the watchtower system demanded from them. The problem with witnesses, both in Poland and in different countries, is that some people are generally good people, kind people, sympathetic people, but the system make them bad sometimes in some circumstances.
In your 14 years as an elder, did you ever hear of any cases of child sex abuse?
No. About child abuse, I knew from a lady who visited me. I knew her as a young woman. She visited me when I was already a former witness. Her name was Joanna. She visited me and told me that her foster father abused her for several years as a young teenager, and that he cried before the judicial committee. He supposedly repented, but they excommunicated her because they thought that she didn't defend her in the right way. And she felt very hurt by this, because what did she could in such situation as a person who was dependent on her mother and her foster father. But she didn't lose her faith and her balance, spiritual balance and mind. She simply wrote a letter expressing her thoughts to the elders, why they so hurt her in such terrible way. But nevertheless, she had problems in relationships with men later.
I want to ask you about Ray Franz.
Yes, it is a very important person in our life.
He received a lot of criticism towards the end for not taking a stronger stance on child sex abuse. It seems to me that this is perfectly understandable if he genuinely didn't know that there was a problem and he wasn't therefore in a position to comment on it. Did he reveal anything to you about these controversies, and do you feel he owed the ex-Jehovah's Witness movement more of a voice on that matter?
I corresponded with Ray Franz since 1999 till 2010, just before he deceased. But he never discussed with me the issue of pedophilia. He made a Czech reviewer made an interview with Ray Franz in a magazine. It was published in Polish magazine Sekty and Fakty, Cults and Facts. And Ray also mentioned some problem of homosexuality in the governing body. But he was very careful not to be very strong on that. So it wasn't a focus of his interest. His focus were some events which were very important in his time, like the search for inappropriate practices in the sexual...
the moral and porneia, yes, and that kind of thing.
Yes, in sexual relationship in the marriage. He was very touched by this, that people were obliged to tell the elders against their spouses that they do some wrongdoings in the bed. So he was much disturbed by such actions. But about pedophilia, he spoke to me nothing.
Was he ignorant or in the dark about it, or was he just trying to cover up the
I
problem?
think that I believe that he didn't cover up it, because I knew him to such extent that I think that he was an honest person. He simply didn't have enough knowledge about this. I believe so.
Yeah, I believe that too, but you were his friend, so I don't get to speak to many friends of Raymond Franz. So. And what do you think he would make of the current governing body and the current state of affairs in the religion?
We had 2 meetings with Ray Franz in October 2007. One was unofficial meetings for former witnesses who were active among helping witnesses to find the truth about the truth. And in this unofficial meeting, he said that he had a conversation with the governing body, Raymond Swingle. And he said to Raymond Swingle, do you know that maybe the old generation of the governing body will die, and maybe something will change? And Raymond Swingle told him, Ray, it is not true. You know perfectly that on one place of one member of the governing body who will die, there are 2 much worse than him to preside within the governing body. He didn't have any hopes, expectations that anything will change for the better. Time told that he was right, that the system is wrong and system is very difficult to reform. And during the official meeting with the governing body, with former governing body member Ray Franz, he said that they put themselves in like it was said that Jesus is the head of the church, that they became the head of organization, and they believe that without their mediatorship, no one can know the truth or way or life. So he was sure that the system will not change, that they are not able to be reformed.
When was Ray's last visit to Poland?
It was the first and last.
Year?
It was 2007.
Okay.
It was the first and last.
And was that, what impact do you feel that visit had on the movement of activism in Poland?
It has great impact, his visit, because many people gathered there, and still more bought DVDs with his presentation. And also Mirek Pietrzak from Belfast, from Britain, he published this material on the website, and also some English-speaking men cut off Polish translation of me, because I was his translator, and it is available for witnesses without Polish translation for witness in English-speaking word. So I believe that these words and wise comments of Ray Franz reached many hearts, many people. And what I can say about Ray Franz, he was a happy man, because he was able to forgive them. Those people who hurt him, who really wanted to show who is the boss there. Yes, they want to show we are the boss, we are the leaders, and you have to leave. But he was happy to forgive them, but he felt responsible for all people who wanted to know the other side of the truth. He believed that many upright people who are valuable, who are honest, who are not some kind of, terrible people with terrible characters, need to be advised, need to be heard, to be supported. And I was really moved by his attitude. He was able to correspond with people from all over the world. He never neglected anybody. In his case, he had several books for brother from Romania, from brother from Slovakia. He remembered almost everybody. I also bought from him some books which were, a bit had some slightly imperfect books in physical state, and he personally sent me these books. So he was really a man who wanted to help people. To me, he was like a brother, like an elder brother, and I asked him many questions, and he was eager to reply. And he never neglected any of my questions. He treated people really seriously. I believe that if we believe that some people can be spiritual shepherds or servants, he was like that. And I gained and I still have great respect for him.
You have been involved in ex-Jehovah's Witness activism for many, many more years than I have. And I've experienced in my short time lots of controversies and infighting between activists and between ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, criticising each other for having the wrong ideas. Have you experienced this, and if so, why do you think?
Some conflicts among former witnesses? Yeah. Yes, I found such situations that there were some, misunderstandings. But to me, it is good to treat the movement of former witnesses who criticize the Watchtower movement and try to help people as on the wider scale. There are some people who reach a kind of audience which may be for which they are convincing. For example, I work in Apollos Center. Apollos Center is a more Christian, more evangelical mission, I would say, but we don't have a purpose to join people to any church. We just want them to find peace of mind, to find a way of life. If they want to be believers, because our offer is for believers, we can give them good alternative. But we know that there are some secular ways of helping people. And for example, I was an expert in a center for study on religious cults and new movements. And I practically helped people without preaching them the gospel. For example, I will give you an example from life. A man about 45 years old came to our center, and he said that his son became very different than before. He started to study with the witnesses, and he was controlled by them to such an extent that he gave a note on the police against his parents, that they disturb his life, that they make his education impossible. The truth was that he was manipulated by one regular pioneer lady who inclined him against his parents. But I visited parents, I gave them some advice, how can they act to him, showing him unconditional love. And I supported them, provided them with some materials. And after a few months, he started to think, to read these materials, and he ceased to be interested in the Watchtower movement. Also his girl, also her brother and her girl, his girl. So 4 young people were, saved. You would say, not in religious sake, but sense, the meaning of the word. So there were some people who needed advice, practical advice, what to do. And I would like to point to another factor which I forgot to tell you. the rise of good psychological publications on cults. We have Polish editions of two major Stephen Hassan's books on mind control. I believe that such books, which are mainly secular, but they give some indications what the cult is, how cults operate, they also contributed to the fact. There are also free internet publications about how cults operate, how we can identify cults. So there are several factors which contribute to the effect we have now in Poland.
If there are any Polish Jehovah's Witnesses who might be watching this video, maybe they still believe to some extent. Could you give a message to them in Polish, and could you speak to the camera?
Drodzy świadkowie Jehowy, pamiętajcie, że my, byli świadkowie Jehowy, nie jesteśmy waszymi wrogami. My was kochamy, my was szanujemy jako ludzi, chcemy dla was jak najlepiej, ale uważamy, że nie znacie całej prawdy. Jest wam podawany tylko wycinek prawdy, podczas gdy prawda jest o wiele ciekawsza, o wiele głębsza, o wiele wspanialsza. Ja, kiedy kilkanaście lat temu zacząłem czytać Biblię bez okularów strażnicy, interesować się historią chrześcijaństwa, historią religii, znalazłem dużo więcej, nieporównywalnie dużo więcej wartościowych informacji, prawdziwych informacji, które uwolniły mój umysł, zapewniły mi pokój serca i umysłu. I ten Bóg, którego teraz znam, ten Jezus Chrystus, którego teraz znam, i ci ludzie, z którymi mam relacje, nie są oparte na jakimś systemie, który ma na celu mnie ustawić w jakiś sposób, zniewolić, ale pokazuje mi swobodne, naturalne działanie, gdzie czuję się normalnym człowiekiem i mogę mieć relacje z różnymi ludźmi i nie czuję się zniewolony, nie czuję się przymuszany do niczego, a jeżeli cokolwiek dobrego robię, wypływa to z mojego serca, a nie z przymusu. Dlatego zachęcam was, otwórzcie swoje umysły, spróbujcie spojrzeć szerzej, zrozumcie, że nie da się na takim pokarmie duchowym, jaki jest wam dawany, daleko zajść, bo to jest naprawdę bardzo mały wycinek i to często bardzo nieprawdziwy.
And could you also give a message to, in case they're watching, the governing body?
Dear governing body members, you are very important people in the Watchtower organization. You have power over lives of several million people. I encourage you to feel responsibility toward at least history, that you will be responsible for your management of this organization. You know that your rules which you present and defend are very difficult to defend now. That the information spread around the world, that, for example, the issue of blood transfusion is not as you say. It is maybe your fear about processes and judicial hearings and scandals that you still maintain that people can lose God's favor when they will take blood transfusions. It is one of your more practical errors. It is one of your most tragic errors. And also in the case of religion, you present a bad figure as Jesus, as a Michael the Archangel. It is not true Jesus, and I suppose you know this. And you will still lose members who will find that Jesus is not like that. So please consider that your management of the organization is more like dictatorship, not a servantship like the first apostles did.